What's up, guys? And this is the first episode of a new series I'm going to be doing. It's going to be called The Fight Game, and it's predicting or seeing what would happen if certain fights would happen in the UFC, boxing, and stuff like that. So, two fights I have my eyes set on right now. These are the two fights to make in boxing and in the UFC. The first one is Jake Paul versus Conor McGregor in boxing. I think these two are pretty evenly matched right now, considering McGregor's been off for some time. He's a little bit he's actually a lot better than Jake Paul at boxing, but he is coming off an injury and he needs to get back into his rhythm of fighting again. So I think Jake Paul versus Conor McGregor would be a good fight because they're about the same weight. They could both make the same weight. Jake Paul's a little stockier than McGregor, but they'd have no trouble making 160 each, so they could both make 160 middleweight, and they could fight for, I guess, bragging rights of the influencer game. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting because Jake Paul, they were talking about doing Logan Paul versus Conor McGregor for the longest time, and I mean Logan Paul, with all due respect, he can't box for shit. He's absolutely garbage. He's like a 2 out of 10 boxer, and it really showed when he fought Mayweather. He was like swinging for the fences the whole fight, just gassing out, and he had no strategy, no plan whatsoever to fight Mayweather. And he really has no place in a boxing ring compared to his younger brother, Jake Paul. Jake Paul is a lot more experienced. He has a lot more training behind him. He has a lot more even drive and vigor behind him to go for someone like Conor McGregor. And Jake Paul's coming off a big fight with Mike Tyson. I mean, he's got some momentum behind him, so he's got some fan base that would want to see his fight for sure. And I mean, it would just be a massive fight. It would just be a massive fight. Conor McGregor, everyone knows him. Just about everyone that watches fighting knows who Conor McGregor is, and he would be the fan favorite, of course. Jake Paul would be the bad guy, which is probably why they're not making this fight. Probably because they can't really decide who would be the bad guy and who would be the good guy, and it would be Jake Paul being the bad guy. Conor McGregor would be the people's champ, which is kind of tough for McGregor because he hasn't had that role for a long time. He's been kind of playing the bad guy for a little bit. He's the older guy, and I mean, they're probably going to make this fight if I had to predict it, some way down the line. They're probably just waiting for McGregor to reach that age where he could lose the fight almost on purpose or set up Jake Paul to take the win like they did with Mike Tyson. But McGregor, after he snapped his leg, I don't think he has any place in the octagon anymore. I think he has to pretty much transition to boxing if he wants to continue fighting. Because, like Silva, Silva broke his leg off the Weidman break, and it was really tough for Silva to come back to the fight game. It was really tough for him to make a comeback, and he did his best. He's one of the greatest of all time, Anderson Silva, and he still struggled even with, petty opponents compared to him. So that's why I think Conor McGregor, he almost has to go to boxing. He has to go to boxing. There's no real option for him to go into the UFC ring because once you break your leg like that, you can't check the kicks anymore. You can't even check the leg anymore off the front of the fight or the beginning of the fight. You can't break your opponent down anymore because your leg's so worn down. It snapped and you're scared of that happening again, and it just haunts you like it did Silva. So McGregor's got to go to boxing. It could be Logan Paul. It would be really disappointing if it was Logan Paul, but I think they've got to make the Jake Paul and the McGregor fight. So that's the first fight I was thinking of. That's for boxing. The second one I was thinking of for the UFC, and this is really the fight to make, and this is the biggest fight you can make. And they're gonna probably overlook this fight, and if they do make it, they're only gonna make one match, which is, I think, a big mistake on Dana White's part, or Dana Pink, whatever you want to call him. So this fight is Alex Poten Pereira versus John Bones Jones. And this is the fight to make. I know Pereira's a bit of a smaller guy than Jones. He fights at a lower weight. But of course they can make the same weight. They don't have to go up to... They can go up to 220. Both of these guys can make 220, no problem. I mean, Poten, he usually fights at 185, but he's a big dude for his weight class. Like, even with Izzy, and Izzy is like 6'5", 6'6", he fights at 185, and he's a big guy. And Poten, he made easy work of what's his name? Of Izzy. So yeah, I think Poten versus Bones would be the fight to make. I know they want to talk about Aspinall because Aspinall's the guy in the top weight class that could fight Jones, but the real challenge of the fight is Pereira. And I know Jones is talking about give me Pereira, give me Pereira, give me Pereira. But here's the thing, guys. Jones is the athlete. Pereira is the fighter. This is how they make these fights in the UFC. It's like I was saying with the McGregor and the Jake Paul. So one of them's an athlete, one of them's a fighter. One of them's older, one of them's younger. Usually the fighter's younger, usually the athlete's older, and one of them's a good guy, one of them's a bad guy. Obviously John Bones Jones is the bad guy, Pereira's the good guy, so he's the people's champ. That's the paid promotion behind the fight. So that's what would bring in a lot of viewers is this good guy, bad guy saga. And I think if they do this fight, they've got to make at least 2 fights. They have to make at least 2 of these 2 matchups if they do make this fight. I know Pereira's a lot smaller, guys. I know he's a lot smaller than Jones, but he's the real challenge out there right now. And you have to make this fight soon because both of these guys they're pretty old. And I mean, as a going goodbye fight for Jones, you almost have to make the Pereira fight, not the Aspinall fight. Aspinall, it's too easy for Jones. It's way too easy. And Dana White, it's stupid because he wants to pad up Jones's record just to set him on a pedestal as one of the greats of the all-time greats of the UFC, which is stupid because Aspinall is not even a challenge. It's not even a challenge for John Jones. Pereira is more of a challenge, and he's at a lower weight because he's got a lot more training behind him, and he's a lot more. How do you say, like, he knows how to flow with the punches a lot better than Aspinall. He knows how to really land his punches effectively and connect on his punches. So it would be a war. It would be an all-out war, Pereira versus Jones. And I'm going to give you my prediction for both these fights at the end of this podcast. But, yeah, I think, and if it went to the ground, I think Jones would win. But I don't think these guys would go to the ground. I think they'd give these people the people a show. I think they'd really bang off in the ring, and they'd just stand up and go out for war if they were to fight. And I know Jones is a little bit older, so he's a little slower. Pereira's really at his peak right now. I mean, he's 33, 34 years old, so he's just reaching that age where he's got the most experience, the most amount of training. He's got enough youth behind him. They don't want to set Jones up for a loss. They don't want to ruin his legacy, which is stupid. It's all rigged, and it really annoys me that it's rigged like that because even this smaller guy, I think he has a good shot at beating this legend. I mean, the reason why I'm all behind Pereira, and I'm kind of biased here, is because he used to work in a favela as a tire worker, and he's got all that training of stomping on that tire. Thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of reps of stomping on that tire over and over again. And when you stomp on a tire like that all day, and you really build up that resistance to pain, and you build the muscle memory like that, you have a lot of tools that you can use in the ring. It's not just it doesn't just translate fighting for fighting. Like training for fighting isn't just training for fighting. You can train for fighting at work. And this goes back to Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward. That's how Mickey Ward trained for his fights. He trained as a journeyman, right? So that's how he won his fights, was training with concrete and that at work. So I think these are 2 great fights. I think these are the fights to make right now, and I'm going to give you my prediction on each fight. So I've got McGregor by decision against Jake Paul. I don't think he could knock Jake Paul out just because he's too tough, or he could if he's swift, if he really lands the right punches. But Jake Paul's been training his ass off, guys. He's been training every day, all day in the gym. He's really gone Mayweather mode with the training. So Jake Paul's got the training behind him currently, and he's got the edge behind him currently on the McGregor fight. So I still give it to McGregor just based off experience. Just fighting IQ and experience. He's got a higher fighting IQ. He's got more experience. So I've got McGregor in the first fight, and I've got Pereira in the second fight, just off the tire working in the favela. So that's my first episode of The Fight Game, guys. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll be bringing you another episode when there are more fights to make like these two. I hope you enjoyed, and be sure to subscribe, like, and comment any questions, and I will be sure to bring you another episode. Thanks for listening, guys. Have a nice day. Peace.